Good afternoon from a very hot and humid Green Island Gardens. In fact, it's so hot today that it's too warm to be doing anything physical in the garden, so we've taken the opportunity to bring you another video. As a result of the previous one we posted, somebody has requested that we do a video of my favourite trees, my favourite shrubs, my favourite perennials, etc, or my 10 best in each category. So today I'm going to show you my 10 favourite perennials. Now do bear in mind that you can't necessarily go out and replicate my favourites in your garden, because it will of course depend on what conditions you have and whereabouts you're located, but I will try and tell you a little bit about each one as we go along. So you might ask why these plants are actually my favourites and why I've chosen them, but the criteria I would use would be based on one of our previous videos when I explained that every plant that I choose for the garden must have at least 3 or 4 positive attributes. So this little one is Pulsatilla vulgaris. Common name is the Pasque flower. Has really pretty ferny foliage which emerges in the spring, really quite downy and velvety. It's followed by beautiful bell-shaped, velvety, purple, deep purple flowers which persist through March and April, and then following that these lovely fluffy seed heads which are really gorgeous. And in fact we sell more of these plants in the nursery when they've actually got their seed heads on than when they've got their plants on, their flowers. So you can see how the season of interest is extended, but it makes a really nice clump. It's not invasive. It has seeded around in this gravel garden. It likes a well-drained soil in full sun, but it's definitely amongst my top 10 in perennials. Another perennial that I would not be without in my garden is Alchemilla, and I have got lots of beautiful ones, but this one I particularly like. It's one of the new modern hybrids that's been bred for the floral industry, which means it repeat flowers. Once the stems have faded, the flowers, it's best to pull them out, just tug them gently, and that will promote the roots to produce another flush of flowers. And in a mild autumn and winter, they will still be flowering at Christmas time. They've got beautifully long, strong stems, and if you cut them and take them inside, they will last up to 3 weeks in water. So really good value flowering perennial if you want something for flowers for a long period of time. These ones are the new hybrids, as I mentioned. They are not as invasive as the old Alchemilla Lig2 hybrids, which used to be widely available, and a lot of people still grow and complain about them being very invasive. They're a bit of a nuisance actually, because they are not nearly as strong growing. They tend to flop over a lot. Their roots run for miles and they're almost impossible to get rid of. And they only flower for a very short period of time, so a couple of weeks in the summer, and then the rest of the year you get nothing. Whereas these new modern hybrids are worth seeking out. They will cost you a little bit more, but they're worth every penny. This one's called Amy. Next group of perennials are salvias, and I have to pick one to be in my top 10. It will be this one, amistad, a really strong grower. A lot of salvias have a reputation of not being fully hardy, but this little clump of 3 here I've had here for years, and they come back reliably every spring, even despite last year's wet winter and then the cold down to -10. Salvias are known for their gorgeous scented leaves, reminiscent of fruit, so berries, red currants and black currants, very strong scented. And then these lovely heads of tubular flowers which go on and on and on. These ones are just beginning to flower now, but again they will go on until the first really heavy frosts in November, December time. Some people like to take cuttings. They're very easy to take cuttings of, more or less any time through the growing season, just as an insurance policy in case they lose them over winter. But as I say, they're fully hardy for us here. Now the next perennial I'm going to show you is one that I've actually featured on an individual video because it's one of my absolute favourites. It's called Dictamnus albus purpureus. Common name is the burning bush, and just standing here I can smell this gorgeous lemony aroma, really strong citrus scent. Lovely lobed pinnate leaves here. We've got lovely purpley flecked deep magenta flowers in June time, and then these lovely really pretty seed heads that come afterwards. But even the whole stem and the seed heads, any part of the plant you touch has this really strong lemony scent. But it's given the nickname the burning bush because it actually gives off volatile oils in the evening, and enough, so much so that they will actually ignite a smouldering taper. It's quite a tricky plant to grow. It needs a nice moist, well-drained spot in a good loam in a sunny position. And the important thing to remember is once you've planted it, don't try and move it. It really resents root disturbance. It can take many, many years to clump up and form a plant like this, or even this one. These ones have been here now for about 20 years, so it really is slow to clump up. Every now and again we'll just get the odd new plant appearing, self-seeded, and that's really the best way to increase your stock of them if you can. But a lovely, lovely plant if you can get hold of it. There is a white version, Alba, as well, both of them equally garden-worthy plants. Agapanthus are a fantastic group of perennials. They're from South Africa originally, and there are lots and lots of different types. Headborn hybrids have been around for donkey's years, but recently lots more modern hybrids have been bred, and they seem to be going for darker, more vibrant blue colours, and I believe they've actually bred a purple coloured one this year. But this is one I particularly like. It's very suited to growing in pots. It's called Agapanthus Flower of Love. Prolific flower from a young age, really, really gorgeous deep blue flowers, and really attractive seed heads after the foliage has gone past. These are the more hardy types. If you get some of the Africanus types, which are much taller, they have much wider leaves and they tend to be evergreen. Those are the ones that are not so hardy, so these would need to be grown in a pot and brought inside in the winter. The narrower leaved ones, as I say, are more hardy. A lot of people do write to me and ask why their Agapanthus are flowering poorly. And the secret to getting them to flower well each year is to make sure that they have enough water following flowering the previous season, i.e. so September time, end of August, September. They need to have adequate moisture or they will not flower well the following year. But if you can give them the right conditions, beautiful perennials. This is a really stunning perennial. Monarda, Cambridge Scarlet it's called. Bergamot is the common name, and if only I could convey this gorgeous scent that it emits from all parts of the plant. Used in cosmetics and candles, you might recognise it, be familiar with it. But it has these lovely funky flower heads which persist for weeks and weeks midsummer. Some of them even develop like a second head, which looks really wacky. The foliage, when it appears, beautifully veined and marked with a deep red mark through the middle, and I particularly like it alongside Alchemilla Amy. I think they look really good together. Very easily grown. Some Monardas can suffer a little bit from mildew, and in this part of the country I would have thought where we're so dry it would be a problem, but fortunately this seems to be a particularly resistant variety for us. It grows really strongly, and this is actually on a shady side of the border, so you don't necessarily have to grow it in full sun, but a really strong growing perennial. Excellent for the wildlife and the bees as well. This is another lovely perennial, Semicifuga racemosa atrapurpurea. Atrapurpurea meaning that the leaves are purple coloured, and really they're most purple when they first emerge in the spring, and all the new growth looks that gorgeous colour. You can see the new leaves here still coming through purpley colour. It grows really quite tall, up to about 7 to 8 feet, and has lovely spires of tiny little white flowers which persist for weeks in the autumn. Very attractive to insects and also beautifully scented. I only realised relatively recently that they had such a gorgeous scent when I picked some to bring them indoors. Because they're growing near the back of a border, you wouldn't necessarily notice the scent. But a beautiful plant, so it gives you lovely foliage colour for about 6 months of the year, and then a lovely month with the beautiful late flowering. spires of flowers. This is an absolute staple. I would not be without it. Alchemilla mollis, or Ladys Mantle, one of the best perennials I think you can have. It has lovely velvety palmate leaves. They look particularly gorgeous after it's rained, and the raindrops seem to just hang around and make the leaves glisten in the sunshine. These heads of tiny little lime green flowers last for a good 6 to 8 weeks through June, July. And then as they go past and turn brown, what we tend to do is cut the whole plant right back to the ground again, as though it was springtime. And that stops the plant from self-seeding, because some people have complained to me that they like the plant, but it becomes a menace because it self-seeds everywhere. It does self-seed, but not if you cut it right back to the ground in August. And it might seem brutal at the time, but within a couple of weeks, I promise you, you'll have a lovely flush of new growth again, which looks really vibrant when a lot of the rest of the garden is going past its best. And it will give you a few extra flowers into the autumn as well. So a really good plant also for ground cover, weed suppressing, and excellent for foliage and colour. Now, this perennial is perhaps not quite looking at its best now, but nevertheless it is still a really valuable one. Astrantia it's called. This one in particular is called Astrantia major Roma. It has lovely pink flowers which do last for several weeks, and then even once they've gone past, it leaves these sort of papery seed heads, almost like dried flowers. But again, like the Alchemilla, what we will do with this is cut it all back and we'll get a new flush of growth. There are lots of different Astrantias around on the market now, and they keep breeding them, trying to get the darkest, deepest red. But beware, if you are looking for those, make sure you buy them in flower, because I've been caught out several times by a lot of very reputable nurseries mis-selling different Astrantias, claiming they're various hybrids when in fact they're not at all. This is one of my favourite spring flowering perennials. So again, rather like the Astrantia, it's not looking at its best now in July. This one is called Smilacina racemosa, although it is another one that they have renamed and changed it to Myanthemum racemosa. It's related to lily of the valley and it's part of the asparagus family, but its common name is false Solomon's seal, and a lot of people, when they see it in flower, think it is Solomon's seal, but the flowers are very, very different. They have long panicles of fluffy white flowers, which are beautifully, beautifully scented, very lemony but sweet, and almost like lily of the valley, reminiscent of that. But I particularly like the green foliage when it first emerges in the spring. It's a really vibrant, zesty green colour, and these leaves are deeply veined and beautifully patterned. Strong growing stems, it doesn't need any staking at all. And then after it's flowered, if you're lucky, you get a few of these little berries, which by the autumn, if they haven't already been eaten by the birds, turn red. So you do get another period of interest with the plant later on. It clumps up and grows very slowly. This clump has been here without being disturbed, I would say, again for 20 years. So it's not invasive. It's not like the Solomon's seal, which can really become a menace in the garden and also gets eaten by the sawfly, the larva of the sawfly. This one is pest and disease resistant, so it's a much, much better plant. So if I could only have one type of perennial, it would definitely have to be Penstemons. In terms of garden value, they are the best plants. They're evergreen. They flower non-stop from June right through to the first really heavy frost. So some years they'll go right through to December. Lots and lots of different varieties. The older fashioned ones and the species ones tend to have the thinner tubular flowers and are more hardy. I haven't got many I can show you at the moment because last winter was a particularly hard winter with the wet and the cold, so a lot of our Penstemons were killed. But this one's called Firebird, and it's flowered reliably for many, many years here. There's another beautiful one that I wouldn't be without called Garnet, but nevertheless, fantastic, long-lasting flowered perennials. The newer, more blousy hybrids, which people are often sucked in by because they look much more spectacular, They are lovely, but they tend to flower themselves out and be much shorter lived than the older fashioned types. So I would always stick with those and go for something like Penstemon Firebird or Garnet. Once again, thank you very much for watching our video. This is the first of a series that we'll follow, which will cover my favourite trees, my favourite shrubs, ground covers and bulbs. So there will be a series of 5 videos in all. This is the perennials. We have lots of the perennials. In fact, all the perennials featured as my top 10 favourites we sell in our nursery. They're all available online as well, or you can phone and order. We do offer mail order. But please remember to subscribe and like our video.